Hi everyone, I'm attorney Aiden Durham with 180 Law Co. in Colorado, and you're watching All Up in Your Business. On this episode of All Up in Your Business, I'm going to talk about 6 common myths or misconceptions that people have about starting and operating an LLC. But first, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and check the description for links to additional information and resources. All right, let's dive right in. So myth number 1 that people commonly have about LLCs is that registering an LLC will protect your business name. There's this common misconception or myth out there that registering an LLC with your state will give some kind of protection over the business or brand name, similar to a way that a trademark registration would. This is pretty much completely false. Registering an LLC is totally a different thing than registering a trademark. And forming an LLC really does almost nothing in terms of protecting your business name or your brand name or preventing somebody else from using it. Forming an LLC, that on its own really doesn't create any kind of trademark rights in the business name. You need to do more in order to have trademark rights in a name or a logo or anything else that is eligible for trademark protection. Really, all it protects is it might prevent somebody else from registering that exact same name for their LLC in the same state. But it's not going to prevent anybody else from registering a trademark for that name or registering an LLC name under the same name in a different state. Often, it won't even prevent someone from registering a very slightly different name. For example, if your LLC name includes a comma in it, some states will still permit you to register an LLC name that's exactly the same but without the comma. Or someone can still register a different LLC name but could use your same business name as their brand or as their trademark. An LLC and a trademark are 2 very different things. Check out this video if you want more information on the differences between an LLC and a trademark and which one you usually want to take care of first if you're starting a business. LLC myth number 2 is that forming an LLC will save you taxes. Again, this one's pretty much completely false. An LLC is considered a pass-through entity, or if you're a single member LLC, it's a disregarded entity, which means that in the IRS's eyes, as far as taxes are concerned, it's as if the LLC doesn't exist. And your tax, you pay income tax on your business's income the same way you would if you were operating as a sole proprietorship. There's really no tax difference between a sole proprietorship and an LLC. And so forming an LLC, that by itself isn't going to do you any good in terms of saving taxes. Now, the one little caveat to that is that by forming an LLC, you potentially have the option of electing to be taxed as an S corporation, which an LLC taxed as an S corporation can, in a lot of circumstances, provide pretty substantial tax savings. Sticking with the tax theme brings me to myth number 3, that forming an LLC in a different state will save taxes. We hear a lot about certain tax haven states that don't charge an income tax or that might be a lower tax rate than other states. Nevada, Wyoming, Delaware, for example, these are all commonly thought of as kind of tax-friendly states to operate a business. But just because you've formed an LLC in one state doesn't mean you're going to be subject to that state's tax laws anyway. Again, in the eyes of the IRS, the LLC basically doesn't exist, and you're going to be taxed based off of where you are or where the business is actually operating. So let's say I'm located in Colorado, my business operates in Colorado. I'm going to pay income tax in Colorado regardless of where my LLC is actually formed. Even if I formed it in one of these states that has no income tax, since I'm not actually doing business there, I don't get to benefit from those tax laws. In a lot of cases, in fact, forming in a different state from where you're physically located and doing business is actually going to increase a lot of your costs, because you'll typically have to still register the LLC as a foreign entity in the state where it's actually conducting business. And now you've got double filing fees because you filed your LLC registration in 2 states. Speaking of where you should form your LLC, myth number 4 is that you have to be a U.S. resident or citizen in order to form an LLC, / that you have to form the LLC in the state that you are located in. Both of these things are untrue. There's no requirement that you be located in the United States or be a U.S. resident or citizen to form an LLC in the United States. Someone living overseas or a citizen of another country can form an LLC in any state the same way a U.S. citizen might. And you also don't have to be located in the state where your business is registered. There's no state that requires that if you want to form an LLC here, you have to actually be here, or you have to actually be conducting business here. You can form an LLC in any state regardless of where you're located. Now again, remember, that's usually not going to save you anything on taxes, and you're typically going to have to still register as a foreign entity in the state where you are actually located or conducting business. Moving on to myth number 5 is that an LLC means you don't need insurance. Again, this one's pretty untrue. An LLC provides a lot of benefit in terms of protecting your assets, but it doesn't do the same thing that insurance will do. The two really go hand in hand, and having an LLC and good liability insurance is going to be the best way to protect your business and your business's assets and your personal assets. So what's the difference? How do the two play along? So an LLC puts a separation, prevents you personally from being liable for your business's debts and liabilities. But that doesn't mean that those debts and liabilities aren't going to come up, or that someone won't be responsible for them. It's going to be the business. Whereas the insurance covers those debts and liabilities. So let's say you're providing a service for one of your customer is unhappy about it, and they sue your business. Your insurance coverage in a lot of instances is going to cover that lawsuit. They'll probably pay for legal fees in defending those claims. A lot of those legal costs and associated costs will be covered by the insurance. And then if you're found to be liable and have to pay out some damages, the insurance is there to cover that responsibility and will pay those damages on behalf of the business, of course, up to the insurance limit amounts. Now, let's say if you didn't have an LLC and you just had insurance, it's still going to work the same. But if you're found liable for something that exceeds the insurance coverage amounts, then you would still be responsible for whatever damages are above and beyond the insurance. But in an LLC, since it's the business that is a party to the lawsuit, it's the business, the LLC, that's liable for those damages. Now it's just the LLC and not you personally. So the insurance covers costs, damages associated with liability and legal issues, but the LLC makes it so that you won't personally be responsible for any of the associated costs as well. And finally, this brings me right into myth number 6, which is that an LLC provides absolute wonderful personal asset protection. Well, that is the idea, and what we're generally looking for out of an LLC is that it will keep us from being personally liable, and it will protect our personal assets. But that isn't absolute. It's not a perfect, impenetrable thing. There's this concept called piercing the corporate veil, which means that in a lot of instances, an LLC member can be still personally responsible for the debts and liabilities of the LLC. So while most of the time that's what we think the LLC is going to do, and typically the LLC does provide that asset protection for us personally, but it's not absolute. There are ways that you can still be personally responsible for the debts and liabilities of your LLC. And check this video if you want to learn more about piercing the corporate veil, ways to avoid being personally responsible for your LLC's liabilities. That's all for this episode, folks. Drop a comment below. Let me know what you think. And again, don't forget to check the description for links to additional information and resources, including my new business checklist that'll walk you through all the steps involved in getting your business set up. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm Aiden Durham, and I'll see you next time.